He wore the robe. He held the gavel. And for years, Judge Boasberg thought that made him untouchable. But that illusion shattered when one woman stood up, not for politics, not for fame, but for truth. And when Karoline Leavitt stepped to the podium in Tallahassee, the system didn't just shake, it cracked. No script, no teleprompter. Just a single stack of sealed documents in a voice that was calm, but razor sharp. She stared directly into the cameras and said it plain. This is not political. This is about trust, and Judge Boasberg has broken it. That sentence echoed like a cannon blast. Within minutes, social media lit up. Newsrooms froze mid-sentence. Congressional aides scrambled. People across America leaned in, wondering, what did he do? What does she know? But that was just the spark. The explosion came later, when Karoline Leavitt stepped into the storm. Armed with evidence and unshakable resolve, she pulled back the curtain on the quiet corruption Boasberg thought would never see the light of day. Secret meetings, backdoor protections, political shielding at the highest levels. Now, the robe doesn't protect him anymore. Now, he's staring down the barrel of criminal charges. Before we dive into every shocking detail Karoline uncovered, tell us where you're tuning in from and hit subscribe, because this story is just getting started and justice is knocking. Let's get started with the shadow of authority. The Supreme Court steps gleam beneath the early morning sun, majestic and imposing. Cameras clustered eagerly, reporters jostling for position as their microphones stood ready, sensing history in the making. Amidst this chaos stood Karoline Leavitt, her posture unwavering, a beacon of calm strength in the storm of flashing lights and shouted questions. Her youthful face belied an intense determination, her eyes piercing as she met the gaze of America through countless lenses. Taking a slow, deliberate breath, Karoline delivered words that sliced through the clamor with crystalline clarity. Justice isn't blind if the judge chooses sides. Her voice resonated deeply, charged with conviction and urgency. Each syllable carried a weight that silenced even the most restless journalists. Karoline continued, her tone steady yet fierce, every word deliberate. Today I stand here because Judge James Boasberg betrayed our trust, turning his robe into a shield for those who wish to evade accountability. This is not merely about one judge. It's about the very soul of our justice system, and whether we, as Americans, still believe in fairness and truth. Her speech thundered through living rooms across the country, stirring the hearts of millions watching from their televisions. Among them was retired Marine veteran Tom Buchanan, his leathery hands trembling slightly with age and emotion. Buchanan's eyes, battle-hardened yet compassionate, locked onto the screen. His chest tightened as memories of sacrifice flooded him. Friends lost, freedoms defended at great cost. Watching Karoline's bravery stirred something deep within him. Clenching his fists tightly, he whispered to himself, voice cracking with pride and long-suppressed hope. Finally, someone brave enough to speak the truth. Meanwhile, Judge James Boasberg, comfortably ensconced in his luxurious chambers, gazed impassively at the television in the corner. Unfazed by the unfolding drama, he calmly adjusted his cufflinks, his expression as unreadable as ever. Boasberg was the embodiment of institutional power, refined, untouchable, and silently intimidating. A Georgetown graduate and Yale Law alumnus, his career was marked by swift ascension through Washington's corridors of power. His rulings, never loudly controversial, always careful enough to sidestep scrutiny, earned him respect and quiet fear in equal measure. Within legal circles, his name was whispered reverently, if reluctantly, a gatekeeper whose approval or denial could alter destinies. Yet today, in this moment, Boasberg felt something different, a subtle yet undeniable shift. For the first time, someone had dared publicly to challenge his authority, and behind his composed demeanor lay a flicker of unease. Karoline concluded her address, the sincerity and courage palpable in her every gesture. As she stepped away from the podium, the assembled crowd erupted into a barrage of questions. Ignoring them, she walked decisively toward her car, her mind already focused on the battle ahead. This was not the climax. It was merely the beginning of a long, arduous fight for truth. Back in his modest home, Buchanan watched Caroline stride confidently off-screen. Slowly rising, he moved to a small shelf crowded with memorabilia from his service days. Photos, medals, old letters. He picked up a faded photograph of his unit, his finger gently brushing over faces frozen forever in youthful bravery. "We fought for justice," he murmured softly, speaking to his absent comrades. "Now it's her turn, and she won't fight alone." 3 months earlier, Karoline Leavitt sat hunched over a mountain of documents scattered across her small office. The pale glow of her desk lamp illuminating her tired but determined expression. Late nights had become her norm, fueled by coffee and an unyielding sense of duty. Pages upon pages of court transcripts, docket entries, and anonymous tip-offs lay before her, forming a puzzle whose pieces were only slowly coming into focus. Initially, it had been just a subtle unease, something not quite right in Judge Boasberg's handling of immigration cases, especially those involving deportation orders linked to violent criminals. But what began as intuition rapidly turned into a rigorous quest for truth. Karoline sifted meticulously through Boasberg's decisions, noticing patterns, unexplained delays, sealed files, verbal orders never officially documented. Each discovery deepened her suspicions. Each question answered birthed more troubling ones. As the evidence mounted, whispers began reaching her ears. Tentative, fearful whispers from court clerks and judicial staff who knew more than they dared say openly. One chilly evening, Karoline met discreetly with a court clerk named Emily, whose anxious eyes darted nervously around the quiet cafe. Over untouched coffee, Emily spoke hesitantly, her voice barely above a whisper, laden with anxiety and guilt. "He doesn't leave trails," she admitted, her hands shaking. "Boasberg's smart. Orders get delivered verbally, no official documents. And clerks who ask questions, they don't stay long." Karoline leaned forward gently, compassion radiating from her voice. "Emily, you've already done so much of just being here. Tell me, has anyone ever openly challenged him?" Emily hesitated, eyes glistening with tears. "Not openly. People fear retaliation. Careers end quietly. But someone needs to speak. People are getting hurt." Karoline left that meeting burdened but galvanized, her heart aching yet resolute. But nothing prepared her emotionally for what followed next. A meeting that shattered her heart and solidified her resolve. Days later, Karoline sat across from Richard and Martha Collins, an elderly couple whose weathered faces carried lines of deep grief and enduring strength. Richard, a retired steelworker, clasped Martha's trembling hand, steadying them both as they shared their devastating story. Their grandson, Daniel, a dedicated Border Patrol agent, had been severely injured during a botched operation. His injuries left him paralyzed, confined permanently to a wheelchair, robbing him of his dreams and leaving their family shattered. Daniel was just doing his job. Martha's voice broke, tears streaming silently down her wrinkled cheeks. They knew these men were dangerous. The paperwork, the orders, it was all clear. But Boasberg, he just tossed it aside, as if lives didn't matter. Richard's voice trembled with barely suppressed rage, his aged eyes burning with the fires of injustice. "Our grandson put his life on the line to protect this country, and this judge, this powerful, untouchable judge, he betrayed Daniel, betrayed us. He made us feel helpless, forgotten." Karoline reached forward gently, her voice tender yet unyielding. "You are not forgotten. I promise you, I'll fight for Daniel, for your family, and for every family let down by those meant to uphold justice." The couple's gratitude and grief intertwined, filling the small room with quiet intensity. They weren't just another case file. They represented countless lives shattered by quiet judicial malfeasance. Returning home that evening, Karoline felt the weight of responsibility heavy upon her shoulders, yet beneath it burned an unshakable determination. She knew her fight was bigger than politics, bigger even than one judge. It was about reclaiming justice itself. Gazing at her reflection in the window, she softly echoed her father's words, ones that had comforted her through life's darkest trials. "Keep climbing, Karoline. Justice awaits at the top." She knew this climb would test everything she had, yet she felt an inner strength, an unbreakable will forged by stories like Daniel's. Karoline Leavitt would not stop until justice was no longer a privilege, but a guaranteed right for all Americans. This was just the beginning. The first real cracks had appeared, and the foundation of Judge Boasberg's power would soon crumble beneath the relentless pursuit of truth. The morning sunlight streamed through the expansive windows of the National Press Club, illuminating Karoline Leavitt's resolute figure standing at the podium. A packed room of journalists, cameras poised, waited breathlessly for her to begin. She took a deep, steadying breath and gazed out over the crowd, each face etched with anticipation. Beside her lay a modest folder, deceptively thin, yet containing secrets powerful enough to shake the very foundations of the judicial establishment. "Thank you all for being here today," Karoline began, her voice unwavering yet gentle. "I called this press conference because what I am about to share with you is not just another headline. It's a revelation of betrayal at the highest levels of our judiciary." A hush enveloped the room as Karoline opened the folder, extracting a small sheaf of papers marked with highlighted sections. Her tone intensified, each word landing with forceful precision. These documents contain encrypted messages revealing that Judge James Boasberg deliberately shielded political insiders from accountability. He manipulated court schedules, concealed crucial evidence, and issued undocumented orders, abusing his judicial authority to protect his allies. Gasps and murmurs swept across the audience. Cameras flashed urgently as reporters scribbled notes, eyes wide with shock. Karoline held up one specific document for all to see. A printed screenshot of a decrypted message. This message states clearly, "Ensure the files remain sealed. JB will handle any fallout personally. JB is James Boasberg, protecting a web of influential figures from justice." This isn't speculation. This is proof. Karoline paused, allowing the gravity of her words to settle, the silence thick with disbelief and anger. In homes across America, elderly viewers watched, hearts sinking. Many sat motionless, their eyes glistening with tears, feeling a profound sense of betrayal by a system they'd believed was incorruptible. In rural Pennsylvania, 78-year-old Margaret Benson clutched her late husband's photograph, shaking her head in sorrow. "We trusted them," she whispered to herself, voice trembling. "We believed our courts stood for justice. How could this happen?" In a modest home in Ohio, John and Emma Hughes sat together, staring at the screen in stunned silence. John, an Air Force veteran, felt his chest tighten, his breath hitching in disbelief. "We fought wars to defend this country," he muttered bitterly. "Now it feels like we've been betrayed from within." Sensing the heavy emotional burden now shared by countless Americans, Karoline spoke again, this time her voice softer, filled with empathy and raw sincerity. "I understand your pain, your anger, and your confusion. My belief in integrity, fairness, and accountability was instilled in me by someone very special. My brother, Michael." Her voice broke slightly, the usually composed Karoline visibly moved as she shared her personal story. "Michael was more than my brother. He was my hero, a soldier who gave his life overseas, fighting for the values he held sacred: truth, justice, integrity. When he died, I promised myself I would live by those same principles. Michael taught me that integrity isn't convenient. It often comes at great cost, but it's always worth the price." Tears welled in her eyes, yet Karoline's voice remained steady, her courage amplifying her message. "Today I fight not just for my brother's memory, but for all of you who have lost faith in our institutions. We deserve leaders who are accountable, judges who uphold justice rather than subvert it. This is why I will never back down from exposing the truth." As she concluded her speech, Karoline stepped back, visibly moved. Reporters surged forward with questions, their voices mingling in a chorus of urgent inquiry. Yet Karoline remained composed, knowing her battle had only just begun. In the aftermath of Karoline's groundbreaking revelations, a storm erupted, sweeping through the halls of power. Judge Boasberg, recognizing the threat to his position, swiftly launched a campaign of damage control. Media allies rapidly mobilized, painting Karoline as a politically motivated agitator, accusing her of attacking judicial independence to further partisan ends. Television pundits and news anchors sympathetic to Boasberg's cause flooded screens nationwide, dismissing Karoline's accusations as baseless conspiracies. Headlines questioned her credibility, suggesting her evidence was fabricated. Yet, beneath the attempts to discredit her, a deeper, grassroots support began surging, particularly among America's elderly. In Florida, groups of retirees gathered in community centers, passionately debating the scandal. 72-year-old Patricia Moreno stood boldly among her peers, speaking with fiery conviction. "They're calling Karoline an aggressor. They're calling her partisan. She's standing up for us, for our grandchildren, for this nation's soul. If that's aggression, then we should all be aggressors." Her words ignited passionate agreement, elderly men and women nodding vigorously, deeply moved by Karoline's courage. The sentiment spread quickly, forming a wave of grassroots support impossible to ignore. Veterans organizations, many members elderly with lifetimes of dedicated service, spoke out fervently. Retired Colonel Robert Hartwell, decorated Vietnam War hero, stood before reporters, voice filled with quiet strength and righteous indignation. "I've seen corruption overseas. I fought it firsthand. But never in my lifetime did I think I'd witness this within our courts. Karoline Leavitt stands for the America we fought for, the America we sacrificed our youth, our blood, our friends for. Justice must prevail." His heartfelt declaration echoed across news networks, deeply resonating with older generations who had similarly dedicated their lives to protecting American values. Soon, elderly citizens across the nation, from bustling urban centers to rural heartlands, were voicing their solidarity, united by shared outrage and hope. Faith-based communities joined the movement, church congregations holding prayer vigils, pastors delivering sermons, passionately affirming Karoline's moral stand. In a small church in Texas, Pastor Elijah Wells addressed his elderly congregation, his voice trembling with emotion. "We must stand beside Karoline. Our justice system has failed us, but our faith and courage can restore it. We owe this fight to our children, our grandchildren, and the generations yet to come." Across the country, emotional interviews captured the depth of public sentiment. Martha Collins, grandmother of injured Border Patrol agent Daniel, spoke through tears during a televised interview. "Karoline gave my grandson hope. She gave all of us hope. She's not a politician. She's a patriot. She's fighting for every forgotten family. If we don't stand with her now, who will stand for us later?" Amid this gathering storm, Judge Boasberg became increasingly isolated, his evasive silence fueling public anger. Elderly viewers, once respectful of judicial authority, now felt a profound sense of betrayal, their trust eroded by the judge's aloofness and refusal to openly address the charges. Karoline watched as a national movement built momentum, strengthened by the genuine voices of everyday Americans. Yet despite the media's attempts to silence her, she remained resolute, buoyed by the stories and support pouring in from every corner of the nation. She understood clearly. The battle for justice had become personal for millions. Karoline was no longer merely challenging a corrupt judge. She was championing the core values that bound America together. And as the storm intensified, Karoline stood unshaken, ready to confront whatever challenges lay ahead, knowing she fought not just for herself, but for the very integrity of the nation she loved. And finally, justice rising. The grand courtroom buzzed with anxious anticipation, filled with an intense silence, broken only by occasional whispers and the shuffling of papers. Karoline Leavitt stood resolutely at the prosecutor's table, documents meticulously arranged before her. Across the aisle, Judge James Boasberg sat with an expression of carefully concealed tension, his attorneys beside him, whispering hastily. Karoline calmly rose, addressing the jury and courtroom, her voice clear and steady, filled with unwavering conviction. "Ladies and gentlemen, today is a turning point, not just for Judge Boasberg, but for all of us who believe justice is sacred, untouchable, and uncompromised by power or influence. The testimonies you will hear are not mere accusations. They are undeniable truths from brave individuals who risked everything to expose corruption." One by one, whistleblowers and legal analysts took the stand, their testimonies methodically dismantling Boasberg's carefully constructed image, The courtroom collectively gasped as a former clerk tearfully admitted, "Judge Boasberg instructed me personally to delay critical filings, to lose paperwork, and to communicate off record, all to protect political allies. I feared for my job, but I feared losing my integrity more." An expert legal analyst detailed meticulous research, unraveling Boasberg's patterns of obstruction and manipulation, describing how he systematically subverted justice. With every testimony, Karoline's case became irrefutable, exposing Boasberg's deep-seated corruption to the light. The emotional climax arrived when the prosecution presented a recorded conversation, a chilling revelation of Judge Boasberg clearly stating, "Just bury the evidence. No one will question me." The voice echoed hauntingly through the courtroom, silencing even the staunchest of his defenders. The judge visibly crumbled under the weight of the undeniable proof, his confident facade shattering publicly. The crowd witnessed a moment of rare vulnerability and humiliation as Boasberg lowered his head, defeated, unable to refute the crushing evidence against him. As the verdict was read, guilty of deliberate obstruction and abuse of judicial power, elderly viewers across America openly wept tears of relief and validation. They embraced each other, applauded spontaneously, their emotions running high. In a heartfelt viral video, an elderly woman passionately stated, "Karoline gave us our voice back. Thank God someone stood up. We've waited so long for justice." Veterans, grandparents, and entire families gathered in front of televisions, feeling their trust in justice slowly restored. Elderly citizens expressed overwhelming gratitude, deeply moved by Karoline's bravery and moral clarity. The courtroom scene became a rallying cry, a vivid testament to the power of integrity over influence. Weeks after the trial, Karoline addressed the nation from her quiet, warmly lit office. Her voice was gentle yet resolute, speaking directly into the camera, capturing the hearts of viewers. "Justice must always be stronger than power. We cannot let our courts become tools of political elites. Accountability is the foundation upon which our nation stands, and when it is shaken, we must stand firm, unwavering, protecting it with everything we have." Following her address, heartfelt testimonials from elderly viewers nationwide were broadcast, filled with expressions of renewed hope, gratitude, and trust in the American justice system. One elderly man, his voice breaking with emotion, declared, "Karoline made me believe again, in justice, in America, in our future. She reminded us that truth matters." In the weeks following, Karoline's office was inundated with heartfelt handwritten letters from older Americans, each message profoundly touching, filled with gratitude, hope, and newfound trust. Sitting quietly, she read each letter carefully, deeply moved by their sincerity and vulnerability. Her closing message to viewers was powerful and deeply resonant. "Justice demands accountability. Your voice, your belief in truth, makes all the difference. Stand with us, and never let silence be louder than truth." As her words echoed gently, viewers nationwide felt a renewed sense of purpose and community. Karoline's bravery had not just exposed corruption, it had rekindled a collective commitment to integrity and justice. Finally, with quiet passion, Karoline made a heartfelt call to action. If you believe in integrity, in accountability, in protecting America's future, subscribe, share your experiences, and join us. Together we can ensure our voices are heard and our values defended. Her powerful words resonated deeply, inspiring countless Americans to unite behind a cause greater than any individual, rekindling their faith in justice and reminding them that together their voices could never be silenced.